Hi, I'm Lew Sitzer, and we are here today to talk about Connect the Dots, an international day of action regarding climate change that is sponsored by 350.org, Bill McKibben's organization that has been active for many, many years to alert us to the climate change that is happening as we witness it throughout the world. And I'm here with Haynes and Richard Thomas, who are also concerned. We are independent of one another, but definitely, and have our views, and we'll express them.
Vociferously.
Yes, we're going to be discussing climate and what has been happening with weather and the risks and dangers we are living with presently, and that will accelerate throughout our lifetime. Particularly, we're devoted to the May 5th action that is going to be taking place throughout the planet, practically in every country throughout the world. And our organization, for what it is going to be organizing a rally at Brunswick, May 5th from 3 to 5 p.m., where we're going to be connecting the dots between the various gas stations at the Brunswick Plaza. So if you're watching and want to participate, be sure to show up at the Rite Aid parking lot at 3 p.m. With your green dot. There will be supplies, and we're going to be discussing at that time. We're going to be rallying surrounding the Flyers gas station and walking across the freeway bridge to the AM/PM ARCO station, as well as the 76 station, walking back and trying to draw attention to the community, educating folks as to what is happening in the world today. And so on that note, I'll turn it over to Richard and Anna.
I'm just curious, Lou, and thank you. I'm just curious about, does anybody out there realize that we're talking about Grass Valley, California? If you stumbled on this link by accident on YouTube, you might not know where Flyers is or the Brunswick overpass. So we're looking at Grass Valley, California on May 5th, 3 o'clock, Rite Aid parking lot.
And the purpose of Connect the Dots is to connect the dots between climate change and the extreme weather that we've been seeing in various parts of the world, and also to put a human face on climate change, because people are being hurt, and they will. This is a harbinger for the future. We need to address this.
The website 350.org will link you to a site near you if you don't happen to be in the Grass Valley, California area.
And if you are in this area, please go to that website and sign up as a participant. That will help to better organize our communications, and also to enlist you in further actions and activity regarding climate change. It's a topic that has been discussed, and the International Panel on Climate Change UN report has documented it in detail with thousands of scientists collaborating to reinforce and emphasize the idea that we are experiencing climate change that will become more and more evident in the years and decades to come.
And one of our concerns is that so far we've seen about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit of climate change, of global warming, and already in the last several years, with the abrupt decline of the Arctic sea ice, and there's a video showing that, we're already seeing extreme weather that seems to be uncharacteristic of what has been seen before. Jeff Masters of Weather Underground says this is not the atmosphere that I grew up with. So if this is a harbinger of things to come, we should be very concerned, and we should take action, especially because it is estimated to cost only between 1% and 2% of GDP.
We should reference Bill McKibben's book here, Earth, because the point you made about this is not the weather he grew up with. McKibben's one of his main points is the Earth as we see it now, and he adds an extra A to Earth. It's not the Earth that harbored the civilizations that we know for the last thousands of years where civilization was able to develop on this planet. It's a different Earth, and that Earth is changing all the time now.
So to give you a little bit more information about 350.org, it's a number that was established of carbon dioxide parts per million as what the planet can sustain. And carbon dioxide has always been part of our atmosphere and has given us a degree of cushion and warmth. 350 is the number that's established beyond which temperature begins to rise. We are now at 394 parts per million, and that number is rising. And as it continues to rise, our temperature globally rises. And 1 degree has already happened. 1 degree of temperature rise is about a 10% decrease in production of grain throughout the planet. So think about as our temperature begins to rise to 2, 3, 4, that will cut into food production. Only one of the elements of climate change that we'll begin to experience is a limitation in the amount of grain and food that can be produced globally.
You mentioned those figures, Lou, about the numbers, the 350, we're now at 396 or something. I think that it's been established that that is going up about 2 parts per million per year, because the current arc is the increase on that. So that's what we have to get under control. And the primary culprit there, I think, has been recognized now internationally. It's not a secret. It's our continuing burning of fossil fuels that's causing the major part of that problem.
So the direct correlation between fossil fuels and global temperature rise has been established. And if you do some research, and we'll be pointing to various ways in which you can increase your information knowledge, go to 350.org and other resources. But temperature rise is also is bringing about not only the warmth of the planet, melting of the Arctic ice and other glaciers, the warming of the ocean, more moisture in the air, greater rainfall,
greater evaporation. So you get both more floods and more droughts, because the greater moisture in the air means that when it decides to dump, it can dump a lot more water.
And so with moisture, we have sort of the incubation of warmth, mosquitoes, the rise of infectious diseases, and these, of course, and with the rise of oceans as the ice melts, we have a great impact on population. Many cities are located very close to coasts, if not at coastal levels.
The majority of the population lives within, 50 miles of the coast, something like that.
And if the sea level starts to rise, it will not stop rising. And the last time that CO2 levels were this high, I think the sea level was like 90 feet higher. It was pretty impressive.
So it's like these facts are accepted and established. Everybody from the California wine grape growers to the U.S. Marines and the Army, I've all taken these facts under consideration. They are making plans for this for the future. There are still, they call them climate change deniers or what you want, people for whatever reason, whether it's links to the oil industry or personal ignorance or what it is that makes people deny that these changes are going on and that humans have the major hand in it. We really need to look ahead, go, what are we doing on a local level, on a personal level? What can we do on a national level? What can we do on an international level? And that's where Bill McKibben, I think, is so important, because he's got people working on every continent, and like Lew said, almost every country, coming together to show that there is a consensus of humanity, that this is a threat that challenges humanity indeed. All our civilizations, we're in the boat together, and we have to work towards solutions together.
And the thing is, you don't have to be absolutely certain. In fact, we have no absolute certainty. But the risk is immense, and the experts are extremely concerned. And basically, anyone who has a child has a stake in the future. And the children and the people in the poor and developing countries will be the ones at most at risk from our actions. And that's like running up a bill in the restaurant and then handing your kid the credit card with the balance on it to pay off. There's
out the back door.
unfairness there. Yes, and sneaking out the back door.
And of course, we in the United States carry the greatest responsibility and burden. We're 4% of the global population. We produce 25% of the carbon dioxide in the world. And if we can begin to establish the political will to change, and there are definitely options to change, we can impact that contribution, negative contribution that we are making.
And we're the country that won't sit down at the table or walks away at the table when the international community gets together and tries to coordinate change, try global change in the United States. Our denial is so deep that it's sad. It's indeed sad.
And a good leader, okay, crises have long roots. You can see them developing for a long time before they flower and become a real serious problem. And a good leader deals with the problem while it is developing and does not wait for it to become a crisis. And I think we need to become good leaders.
And one of the things, unfortunately, that's true about carbon dioxide is it stays in the atmosphere 100 years.
Or more.
Yeah, and we are not slowing down in the amount of carbon dioxide we are contributing to the atmosphere. That is accelerating, and we need to recognize that and do something about it. So we're talking about movements that start at the local level and grow internationally. And 350.org May 5th will be emphasizing that point. And so how do we begin to change the situation? And we can talk about local, national, and international ways to do that. Richard and I are active gardeners. We have lived a lifestyle that attempts to diminish the carbon footprint that we have, and yet there's so much more that can be done. One of the ways in which we see solutions is scientific, with innovations in energy and changes in that realm. But political change has to happen as well, and big oil and the fossil fuel industry has a tremendous influence, if not control, over what happens in our national discussion and what happens in Congress, what happens at the executive level as well. So we have to begin to rally and protest more vociferously, and May 5th is an example of what will happen. And there are rallies that will take place in practically every country in the world. And what we're seeing is that people, you and I and others in our communities, are beginning to speak out. Much like the Arab Spring, we're seeing communications happen, and we know that one of the ways that change happens is at the grassroots level, like the civil rights movement, and a movement that grows internationally will help to change the dialogue that's going on.
Bill McKibben spoke here last week, well, I guess at this point, a week ago Tuesday, and a point that he made that I think is extremely important is when he is asked, what are the 3 most important things you can do to fight climate change? He says, first, get political. Second, get together with your neighbors and organize. Third, get more political. And fourth, if you still got time, change your light bulb. The problem will be solved when we have the political will to institute a price on carbon that will align the economic incentives with good behavior that will actually solve the problem.
One of the things that we have lost sight of is that our nation was established by people taking initiative and taking power and exercising it, both at the local, statewide, and national level. And we really need to grab hold of that idea that we can empower ourselves. And I agree with Anna. It has to happen at the political level. And where does that begin? Where does it end? And I can draw attention to our own community. 2012 is the International Year of the Cooperative. We have a market that is emphasizing local farmers, sustainability, energy conservation. It was the first LEED, which is national standards for construction with energy conservation in mind, LEED certification. There are standards in California that are the highest in the nation in terms of carbon exhaust, and I think it has already changed the amount of CO2 that's been emitted in California.
Absolutely. California is leading the world. We're responsible for a good, I guess, 1.4% of the carbon emissions, California alone, globally. So it's only right that we lead the way. It was Governor Schwarzenegger that signed the legislation. So I think California has begun to assume the responsibility of being the leader that California has been in so many technologies and agriculture in the past.
And climate change is a threat multiplier. There are all sorts of effects that will happen that will be made worse by climate change. For example, water in California, if we lose our snowpack, or up to 90% of it, then you can imagine what's going to happen to all our free-flowing rivers. You know, we're going to have to dam them.
Not to mention our agriculture.
Not to mention our agriculture.
Yeah, bleak prospects there. Anna and I had a little discussion before we went on
It was a good one.
on electrons here, and I'm sure we'll continue it. And I happen to know that Anna also has an electric bicycle, so she's not opposed to the effect that individuals can have and communities can have in this. But she really emphasizes organizing, government change,
building political will.
Building political will, and I have nothing against building political will, but I also think we've got to live locally. We have to live our lives in a way that satisfies. And our differences with what McKibben's emphasis was, you say organize, 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 and if you have time, change your light bulb. Well, at the very end of his book, I'll just read a little paragraph here, he says, there are two strands we must simultaneously undertake. We've got to harden our communities. Mm-hmm. Harden our communities means disconnect ourselves from those food sources that come 1,500 miles to get to your plate. Disconnect ourselves from the need to constantly travel great distances to get to our jobs. Harden our local communities, local energy sources, protect your local water supplies. Because the bigger systems are looking in dangers, those are ones that are going to fail. So your local systems need to take over. So we need to harden our local communities so that they can withstand the couple of degrees of global warming that are now inescapable. There's going to be a couple more degrees that are inescapable, he says. And in the summer of 2010 show, that's no easy task. At the same time, we've got to cooperate internationally to force legislation change that will hold those increases below the 4 or 5 degrees that would make it a difficult century and an impossible one. Much will depend on how effective that movement building turns out to be.
And he did make this point at the talk, which I thought was extremely well done. He said that it's very important to green your community, and we have a lot of organizations in this community working on that, but don't make the mistake of working only on those things. The political aspect and getting a price on carbon is crucial.
But don't make the mistake of only working on that and not hardening your local community.
And let me emphasize that this is not a partisan issue. This is not a Republican Democrat. This is not something that divides us. This is something that the global scientific community has documented in detail.
And the enemy is physics.
That's right. And you know, one of the wonderful comments that Bill McKibben made in his presentation is a quote from Martin Luther King, and that is that the moral arc of the universe is long and bends towards justice, but in terms of physics, the arc of physics is short and bends towards heat. So we need to keep in mind that there are many ramifications of global climate change. We're going to be experiencing them more and more in terms of freakish weather occurrences, more dramatic, more frequent, more intense than we have had in the past. And as we've said before, this is the beginning of climate change, and we're going to be discussing it in length.
Long-term ramifications of climate change can get really scary when you have entire populations that are in a position where they can't feed themselves, where they don't have enough water, when you say you imagine the citizens of the Balkans needing to go north, looking at the mineral resources of Russia. You're talking about a return to the warfare over resources that was prevalent on the planet for thousands of years, that we've really only moved away from in the last several hundred years, although we've still had wars.
There's a book I'd recommend along those lines called Climate Wars by Gwynne Dyer, he talks about how climate change is a threat multiplier for a military threat, and the Pentagon is concerned.
Pentagon is involved. Before Lew starts pitching his pack of literature over there, I want to pitch Earth again, Bill McKibben's book. It's very readable. Roughly the first half just details, almost anecdotally, specific incidents around the planet where the effects are being felt by people, whether it's flooding in Pakistan or goes on and on. And then the second half is the very hopeful section that we can, if we pull together, if we unite globally, we can impact it, we can reduce its impacts over time. We're not going to stop it. We're still going to face it, but we can stop the most extreme manifestations of climate change.
Right. This may sound like a bad horror movie, one that we've seen on the screen somewhere before, but I do want to point out that we wouldn't be doing this show if we were pessimists. That there are options and ways to proceed. A list of resources will be documented at the end of the video, but I do want to point out to Building the Green Community, a series of stories, Plan B 4.0 by Lester Brown, who is head of the World Watch Institute, and the last by Daniel Yergin, Pulitzer Prize winner, called The Quest, which is a very in-depth study of energy and the associated problems and histories that we have experienced, and ways in which that we can begin to develop a sane and rational energy policy and strategy to deal with what we're experiencing in terms of climate change.
One conceptual thing I'd like to put in here is comes from Henry David Thoreau, who said, "For every 1,000 people hacking at the branches of evil, there is one person striking at the root." And it's another way of looking at the threat multiplier aspect. Climate change is a threat multiplier for all sorts of different problems, and so whatever your problem is, if it will be exacerbated by climate change, you want to work on climate change as the root, and save some cycles to work on climate change. Likewise, the political corruption, money and politics corruption, is a root of difficulty in solving all sorts of problems, including fixing climate change. So whatever you're working on, think about what is feeding that issue, and try to work also on that problem as well.
I'd like to make a pitch for conservation. I do not see it's there. There may be hope for scientific advance that's somehow going to come up with an energy resource that'll replace fossil fuels, but it's nobody's banking on it. All the technologies we're talking about, from wind power to solar, everything so far, hydrogen, whatever, small amount of power with regard to what's going into it, how much they're generating. So to replace fossil fuels, and this is a huge point right out of McKibben. He says, remember. A barrel of oil equals about 11 years of manual labor. 1 barrel of oil, 11 years of manual labor. The average American uses the equivalent of 60 barrels of oil a year, which is each of us having 660 individuals working for us. Preposterous overconsumption on the part of America compared to any other civilization going right now, and totally unsustainable.
But our country is structured so that you cannot live a sustainable lifestyle.
I would argue that, but that might be another show.
Well, I would also draw attention to the fact that, yes, we're going to experience lifestyle changes. Remember World War II and Victory Gardens. And I think that we have to look at our history and remember in how many ways we have risen to the challenges. When I built our solar home in 1974, I included a clothesline. You know, how many people have clotheslines these days? And in fact, you know, what's so bad about them? You know, I actually like the way clothes smell after they've been dried by the sun.
Some communities don't allow them.
Okay, Richard Alley, Earth, the Operator's Manual. It's a book. It says solar. If we get harness solar, we're cool. Read the book. It's very encouraging, and that's all I got to say.
So we thank you all, and we want to emphasize May 5th, Saturday, 3 p.m.
ClimateDots.org.
Sign up, come to the rally if you're in Nevada County or close to us, and we hope to be back with further information, further shows, and we hope that you will attend the climate rally in your location, wherever you are in the world. Go to climatedots.org. And you'll be able to see where that is. They're showing events throughout the world. Every country has a 350.org organization in the world except North Korea. So think about the power of that.